Our trip to France to visit my boyfriend's grandparents didn't turn out as amazing as I had been hoping. I had been looking forward to it so much. The French countryside, French food, visiting a real French farm. I had started practicing French well since I started dating Nicholas, but as our long-promised trip grew nearer with renewed fervor. And finally, we were here. Everything so far had been up to expectation. The 2 nights in Paris, the sightseeing, the train rides, and now at the farm. It was my first trip to Europe, and I drank everything in with delight. Nicholas had been more restrained, putting on a worldly look which rather annoyed me. But as the train got closer to the little town closest to his grandparents' place, he seemed to mellow out. As indeed he should have been. The fields were like postcards. We arrived late afternoon, and Grandpa took us out on a little tour of his land. The setting sun hit the lush green vegetable gardens just right, and the frothy leaves lit up in jade and emerald. Grandpa grunted. "You're not going to get flavors like these in America. Only McDonald's there." His pastoral accent was heavier than what I had noticed from a few video calls we had, and I smiled politely despite my valiant efforts to learn French before our trip. I could pick up only the rough sense of what he was saying. I stole a glance at Nicholas. He was suppressing the urge to roll his eyes and correct his grandfather that he lived in Canada. It was a timeless dance, as he had described to me since his childhood, when he used to spend summers at the farm with them. Grandfather bashed Americans and waxed lyrical about French fruits and vegetables, and Nicholas nodded, counting the days he could leave. He had decided at an early age that he refused to make the superiority of French turn up his identity. But the food was amazing. Right. Holding my hand, we followed Grandpa into the ancient stone farmhouse, where the French feast of pot au feu with those amazing farm-grown vegetables, crusty baguettes, and red wine awaited us, just as their ancestors would have it. But Grandpa was angry. As we spread bone marrow on the torn bread, flavored only with salt and just a touch of horseradish, he ranted about government subsidies. I could see from Nicholas's slight frown that even he had difficulty following his grandfather's French, filled with farming jargon. "We will show them our tractors blocked the country last year. We need more fertilizer," du sang noir/traders in Paris, telling us how much should be using. What do they know about our vegetables? "Only 100 kilos this year, are you fucking kidding me?" I said to the association. "Just my leeks need 45 kilos d'engrais noir/, I can't miss the season. Already too late," my brain twit. In careful English, Grandmere asked me, "Are you sure you drink wine?" I nodded. Grandmere looked at Nicholas. "She drinks wine?" she asked in French. Nicholas grabbed the wine bottle and poured for me, and I gratefully took a huge sip. Grandmere looked scandalized. I reminded myself there was a good reason why Nicholas had insisted we only stay for a night. Grandpa stopped ranting and turned to me. Unable to bear his blue gaze, I cast my eyes down on my plate of boiled vegetables. He reached out his thick work-worn hand and lightly touched my cheek. I flinched. It felt as though he had struck me. "Assez noir," he smiled. My eyes grew wide as uncertainty, offense, and fear filled my heart. "Assez what now?" I turned to Nicholas, telegraphing a little panic. He looked at Grandmere, who was loudly chewing a bit of gristle. "Can we go to our room?" he asked in English. Grandmere jolted out of her chewing reverie. "Of course, Mies Petties. Come. All that travel?" After she showed us the room, the same room Nicholas had spent his summers in, she left us, smiling and saying bonsoir. We sat side by side on the bed, not saying anything. I felt discombobulated by the travel, the language, and the comments. After a while, we got up. It was dark. His grandparents would have gone to bed, we were sure. We slowly went back downstairs to fetch our suitcases. A scraping sound wafted up the stairs. His grandparents weren't in bed. Scrape, scrape. A dim light spilled from the kitchen, and we both saw Grandpa sharpening a knife. Without needing to say a word, we turned, dashed back upstairs. We grabbed our backpacks and slid out into the hallway. He was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "Leave her, Nicholas. We need the blood. For the farm, it needs dark blood." It seemed like suddenly a switch had turned on in my brain, and I could perfectly understand what he said. He took a step up. Nicholas stepped in front of me, and we both clattered down towards him. I screamed as a pair of hands shoved me from behind, and I started falling towards Grandpa's sharp knife. Twisting my neck, I saw Grandmere above me. She didn't follow us down. Nicholas swung his backpack as I fell against him. Grandpierre grunted as it caught the side of his head. As he stumbled and fell off balance, Nicholas swung again, and we were able to dash by him and run to the door. Fiddling with the heavy locked door seemed to take an eternity. Grandpierre stood up and lunged towards. I deflected him with another swing of the backpack, and finally Nicholas was able to shove the door open. We ran out into the warm dark, heavily scented with the smell of flourishing vegetables, running towards the road. I looked back. The silhouettes of Grandpierre and Grandmere stood backlit in the doorway, as still as a painting. They made no attempt to chase us, just stood there watching as we ran down, away, and towards the town.